The twin suns of Virelia Prime hung low over the marble spires of the capital city, their light dimmed by thick, swirling clouds of ash. Once the skies had shimmered with trade ships and banners from 1,000 worlds. Now only smoke trails and broken satellites remained, silent witnesses to a dying empire. Inside the Grand Council chamber, the air trembled with whispers and fear. The chamber was built for glory, tall crystalline walls, golden rings that rotated slowly in the air, and banners of red and silver, the colors of a proud civilization. But today those colors looked faded, like the memories of better times. At the center stood Chancellor Varro, his robes torn from long days of war and sleepless nights. His eyes, once sharp and certain, carried the weight of 1,000 defeated worlds. Around him sat the High Council, 12 elders, generals, scientists, and ministers, each showing the same quiet dread. A hologram glowed above the round table, showing the latest front lines. Entire sectors flashed red, one after another, consumed by an advancing darkness. The council stared as if watching their own funeral unfold. "The Zyrith swarm has breached the Sirius belt," said General Alrin, his voice hollow. "That was our last defense line. Their drones devoured our satellites within hours. They are adapting faster than we can think." A murmur spread across the room. No one looked up. No one spoke of victory anymore. Varro stepped closer to the projection. He raised a trembling hand and zoomed in on the red lines, the zones now lost forever. "How many systems remain?" "2, whispered the Minister of Records, "and they are falling. Our ships can't outrun them. Our weapons can't pierce their hulls. Every countermeasure fails." Varro's gaze turned distant. He could almost see it. The endless tide of Zyrith, machines of black alloy and shifting limbs, consuming light, life, and metal alike. "A plague without voice or mercy. The gods have abandoned us," muttered one elder. "No empire has survived their hunger. Perhaps this is how it ends." Varro turned sharply. "Not yet." His voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Not while I breathe." "But Chancellor," said another, an old woman with trembling hands, "there is nothing left to fight with. Our fleets are gone. Our colonies, then we find something beyond fleets, beyond colonies." Varro's eyes hardened. "Bring me the ancient records." The elders froze. The ancient records were not a weapon. They were a warning. Locked archives, sealed for centuries, containing knowledge from the age before peace. A time of chaos, of weapons so terrible they were erased from history. A young archivist hesitated. "Sir, those files were buried for a reason. The species recorded there. Bring them," Varro ordered. "Now." Moments later, shimmering hollows rose from the table, filling the chamber with ghosts of the past. Names, star maps, warnings written in ancient tongues. Among them glowed one file, sealed with the mark of the First Council. Varro gestured. The seal broke. A face appeared. Human. Eyes of fire, a world behind them burned. The audio crackled with static. Then a voice, wan, deep, fierce, unyielding. "We fought them once," the voice said. "The machines you fear. We know their code, their hunger. But if you seek us, beware. We do not come as saviors. We come as storms." The recording ended. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. "Humans," whispered General Alrin. "They vanished long ago. The stories say they tore their own worlds apart. They were chaos incarnate." "They were survivors," Varro replied quietly. "And we are not." Another counselor slammed his hand on the table. "You would call monsters into our galaxy. They could destroy what little remains. Better monsters we summon," Varro said coldly, "than the ones we face." The chamber erupted in protest. Voices clashed as warnings, prayers, accusations. Some begged him to reconsider. Others wept. But Varro stood firm. He had watched his empire die one star at a time. Pride was no longer a luxury. He turned to the technicians. "Prepare the signal. Use all frequencies. Use ancient code if you must. If they still exist, they will hear." The crew worked quickly, fingers flying across consoles. The great transmitter, the celestial gate, powered up deep beneath the capital. Lights flared, energy surged, and a beam of coded light shot into the dark between stars, carrying a single desperate plea. "To the species known as humanity. We are under attack by the Zyrith swarm. Our worlds are dying. We beg for aid." The beam vanished into the void, and then silence. Hours passed, then days. The council returned to their chambers, their voices quieter, their hope fading. In the long halls of Virelia Prime, even the soldiers stopped asking questions. They all knew the truth. No one ever came back from calling the dead. Varro stood alone by the great window, staring at the stars. Each one a dying ember. He whispered to the empty sky, "If you still live, if the stories were true, answer." A sudden sound broke the quiet, a sharp, rising tone from the transmitter. The technicians froze. The signal flared back to life. Incoming transmission. Unknown source. Varro turned slowly, his heart hammering. The chamber filled with static. Then a voice, cold and clear, cut through the noise. "Message received. Stand by." The lights flickered. Somewhere beyond the edge of the galaxy, something stirred. Across the fractured galaxy, rumors traveled faster than light. Whispers drifted through trade routes and pirate channels, carried by frightened pilots and trembling diplomats. They all told the same story. The Virelians had called the humans. At first, no one believed it. Humanity was a myth, a shadow from the old wars. The archives spoke of them as a young, violent race that burned bright and then vanished into the dark beyond the rim. Some said they destroyed themselves. Others said they built something so terrible the stars themselves exiled them. But now, after centuries of silence, a forgotten signal had been answered. On the mining world of Tessara, two smugglers argued in a crowded cantina. "You're lying," one hissed. "Humans are gone, dead long before my grandfather's time." The other leaned close, lowering his voice, then explained the pulse, and I felt it in the core drives. A beacon, old code, human encryption. They're awake again. In distant systems, leaders gathered in panic. Some ordered fleets to retreat closer to home. Others shut down trade lines that pointed toward Virelia Prime. No one wanted to be near the storm if it truly came. Among the old empires, fear was a language everyone understood. Meanwhile, far beyond the known routes, in a region of silent stars, a lone Virelian scout vessel drifted in orbit around a dying moon. It was small, barely armed, its crew weary from weeks of waiting. The captain, a young officer named Rylan, stared out the viewport at the endless black. "How long has it been?" he asked quietly. 6 cycles since the Chancellor's call," replied his navigator. "Still no movement," Rylan sighed. "Maybe they really are gone." Before the navigator could answer, the console flickered. A low hum filled the cockpit, deep, resonant, unnatural. Raylan frowned. "What is that?" The sensors screamed to life. Energy readings spiked off the charts. Space itself seemed to ripple. The dying moon's shadow warped and stretched, bending toward a single point in the void. And then reality tore open. A rift appeared, vast and silent, like a wound in space. The crew shielded their eyes as light spilled out in waves of blue and white. From the heart of that rift emerged a ship, colossal, angular, its hull black as night lined with glowing veins of silver. It didn't move like other vessels. It drifted with purpose, every motion deliberate, graceful, controlled. Raylan whispered, "By the stars." Dozens more followed. Heavy cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, each one silent, precise, forming a perfect formation in orbit. No broadcast, no signal, only the quiet hum of power. The crew watched, breathless. A moment later, a transmission crackled through. The voice was calm, steady, human, but heavy like thunder under glass. "Virelian vessel, this is Admiral Kessler, commanding the United Terran Armada. We heard your call. Show us your enemy." The bridge fell silent. The translator confirmed the language, ancient but unmistakable, human. Raylan swallowed hard. "Her Admiral, Kessler, we're honored. But your fleet, it's enormous. How many ships do you command?" "Enough." The response was simple, final. There was no pride, no arrogance, only cold certainty. Raylan hesitated. "Do you require negotiations?" "Terms of—" "We don't negotiate with extinction." The words chilled the crew. These were not diplomats. These were soldiers who had seen the end before. The rift behind them closed, sealing shut as if it had never been. The human fleet turned in unison, like a single mind, their engines glowing faintly blue. Raylan's navigator whispered, "They move like machines." But Raylan shook his head. "No machines hesitate. These don't." From the flagship's bridge, Admiral Kessler stood before a wall of stars. His uniform was dark, his face marked by long scars that told stories of wars no one remembered. Behind him, officers worked silently, each movement measured. "Transmit their coordinates," Kessler ordered. "We move at once." One officer hesitated. "Sir, this galaxy isn't ready for us." Kessler's gaze hardened. "It wasn't ready the first time either. Move." Back on the Varelian scout ship, the crew watched as the massive armada aligned itself, preparing for a jump. Raylan's hands shook. He turned to his navigator. "Send word to the Chancellor, tell him they came." The message burst across subspace, echoing through systems that had given up hope. On Virelia Prime, Chancellor Varro stood in the war room when the report arrived. The Varelian capital had not seen visitors in years, not since the war began. Now its skies trembled as shadows passed over them, vast angular silhouettes silent as ghosts. The human fleet arrived in perfect order, sliding into orbit like blades being drawn. From the surface, citizens stared upward through broken domes and cracked windows. Some fell to their knees. Others ran indoors and prayed. The old stories had warned them. If the sky darkens and the stars vanish, the humans have come. In the Grand Assembly hangar, Chancellor Varro stood waiting. His robes were freshly pressed, though his hands shook at his sides. Behind him gathered the High Council, military officers, and a row of ceremonial guards who looked more frightened than proud. The air shimmered, and a human shuttle descended slowly, engines humming like a heartbeat. Its metal hull bore no symbols, no colors of allegiance, only the faint mark of a blue circle with a single white star at its center. As the ramp lowered, silence swallowed the chamber. The first human stepped out, tall, sharp-eyed, wrapped in a dark uniform. Admiral Kessler. He moved with the calm weight of someone who had seen too much and buried more. His officers followed, quiet, precise. Their boots struck the floor in perfect rhythm. Varro took a cautious step forward. "Admiral Kessler, on behalf of the Varelian Empire, I welcome you to our world. We are honored by your arrival." Kessler nodded once, expression unreadable. "We received your distress call. You face the Zereth swarm." Varro exhaled. "Yes, they've consumed nearly half our empire. Our fleets crumble before them. Kessler raised a hand, stopping him gently. "We know." That single phrase froze the room. "You know them?" one counselor stammered. "You fought them before?" Kessler's gaze turned toward the vaulted ceiling, where faint images of ancient victories shimmered in gold. "A long time ago. We thought they were gone." He stepped closer to the holographic display in the center of the chamber. It showed the Varelian borders collapsing, red lines devouring blue. Kessler studied it, his jaw tightening. "How many systems have fallen?" Varro hesitated. 48. 2 remain. We've moved our civilians to bunkers. Our weapons cannot harm the swarm. They adapt too quickly." The Admiral's eyes darkened. "They always do." "Then you understand our desperation," said Varro. "If there is anything you require, any price—" "We don't fight for payment," Kessler said softly. "Not anymore." The room fell quiet. Varro tilted his head. "Then why come?" Kessler's voice lowered, carrying an edge of grief. "Because this is not your war. It's ours. The Zereth were born of human hands, and we will end them." A murmur rippled through the council. Varro felt his chest tighten. Born of human hands? What did that mean? But he dared not ask, not yet. Instead, he turned toward his generals. "You will give them full access to our strategic network. Share every file we have." A nervous general whispered. "Chancellor, we don't even know they're—" "Do it!" Varro snapped. Then softer. "They came when no one else would." Kessler said nothing. He simply placed a small silver disc on the table. Holographic light expanded from it, scanning the room, linking to the Varelian systems with silent ease. "Fleet Command, this is Kessler," he said into his comm. "Begin deployment." Outside, the dark ship stirred. Engines roared softly as they split into precise formations, fanning out across the sky. Some descended into atmosphere, others took station above the poles. Every movement was calculated, every formation exact. From the control tower, Varelian officers watched the display in awe. Their own ships were scattered, chaotic, exhausted. The human fleet moved like a single creature, disciplined, alive. "They coordinate without delay," one engineer whispered. "It's as if they share one mind," another shook his head. "No, this is training. Ancient, perfect training." Down below, Kessler studied the Varelian defense grid, trembling lines of energy domes and planetary cannons. "Your shields will fall in hours," he said plainly. "The swarm won't attack your strongholds. They'll strike the air, poison your soil, consume everything alive." Varro swallowed hard. "You speak as though you've seen it." Kessler's eyes lifted to the ceiling again. "I watched it burn once. My home, my world. We will not let it happen again." The Admiral turned sharply. "Begin evacuation of your civilians. Move them underground. Every soldier you have, pull them to your southern bastion. Leave the skies to us." Varro hesitated. "You intend to face them alone?" Kessler nodded. "You asked for help. We brought it." The Chancellor stared at him, at this man who spoke with the calmness of a storm. "Then tell me, Admiral," he said quietly, "what do we call you? Your people, your fleet. What name do you go by now?" Kessler paused for a moment, as though remembering something distant. Then softly, "We are the United Terran Armada. We came from Earth, long ago." The name hung in the air like a ghost. Earth, a word that once belonged only to legends. Kessler turned back to the display. "The Xyrith are moving. They've detected our arrival. They'll come soon." Varro tried to steady his voice. "And when they do?" The Admiral's gaze hardened. "Then they'll remember why they feared us." Outside, the sky shimmered as the human fleet began to move. Massive carriers opened their bays, releasing sleek gunships that glided into formation. Dreadnoughts aligned their cannons, and blue light rippled along their hulls. For the first time in generations, the people of Virelia looked to the heavens and saw hope, mixed with terror, because the monsters they had summoned were real, and they had come not to bargain, but to end a war that never truly died. The darkness came first, a silent ripple across the edge of space. Then Sensor screamed. The Xyrith swarm had found them. In orbit above Virelia Prime, the human fleet shifted formation. Thousands of ships glided into position, like pieces of a colossal machine, engines pulsing with blue light. From the planet's surface, they looked like a new constellation, cold, perfect, and terrifying. In the command chamber of the United Terran flagship, TNS Vengeance, Admiral Kessler stood before a panoramic view of the stars. The holographic display showed incoming red markers, multiplying every second. The swarm was vast, a cloud of black metal writhing like a living storm. A young officer whispered, "Reading. Over 500,000 signatures, sir." "All moving fast." Kessler's jaw tightened. "They're testing us. They always do." He turned toward his officers. "Signal the fleet. Code black. Lock formation Theta 9. Low communication once they're inside range." The order rippled across the fleet. Engines shifted pitch. Carriers opened their bays. Warships extended long, glowing lances. Every ship moved in silence, as though guided by instinct, not words. Down below in the Virelian command center, Chancellor Varro and his generals watched the feed in stunned silence. The human ships didn't scramble. They didn't shout. They simply prepared. Calm. Certain. General Alrin muttered, "They're outnumbered 100 to 1. Varro's gaze never left the screen. "Then may the stars have mercy." From the void the swarm emerged, a tide of black, shifting metal, countless ships, shapes twisting as they flew. They moved without heat, without light, like shadows devouring the stars. The first wave surged forward, claws extended, firing streams of molten plasma. The humans did not retreat. Kessler's voice was quiet, almost ritual. "Weapons free." A heartbeat later, the void erupted. Beams of blue light tore through the darkness. Railguns fired streams of tungsten slugs, invisible until they ripped entire swarm clusters apart. Missiles bloomed like new stars, detonating with silent fury. The swarm answered. Black tendrils lashed out, wrapping around cruisers, trying to tear them apart. Drones swarmed human hulls like insects on glass. Each one tried to burrow through armor, to infect, to consume. But the humans had seen it before. Nanoflames burst from ship exteriors, incinerating the parasites. Point defense cannons spun in blinding arcs, each shot precise, each explosion measured. In the Vengeance, Kessler watched the battle unfold like an old memory. "Steady," he ordered. "Hold the line," a lieutenant called out. "They're adapting, sir. Adjusting formation patterns." "Then change the rhythm." Kessler gestured to the tactical officer. "Delta override. All units switch formation to Phase 2. Instantly the fleet shifted. Ships split apart, weaving through enemy lines, drawing the swarm inward. And then, from behind, the second wave struck. Hidden destroyers emerging from cloaked positions, unleashing a storm of kinetic fire. The Virelians watched from afar, unable to believe what they were seeing. "This isn't war," whispered one officer. "This is extermination." In the upper atmosphere, the clouds glowed with reflected fire. Fragments of Zyrith ships burned as they fell, streaking like dying comets. The people on the ground stared upward, some cheering, others trembling. On the flagship, an alarm sounded. "Sector 9 breach. Enemy unit breaking through." Kessler glanced at the readout. A massive Zyrith battleship, larger than any before, tore through the formation, claws unfolding, mouth of molten gears roaring. The Admiral's voice was ice. "Bring it down." 3 human dreadnoughts moved in unison. Their weapons charged, long beams converging into one brilliant line. The shot cut through the swarm's flagship, cleaving it cleanly in half. The explosion lit up the void. The enemy reeled. For the first time, the swarm hesitated. "Push forward," Kessler commanded. No survivors. The humans advanced relentless. Every blast precise, every movement coordinated. They left nothing behind, no debris, no wrecks. The sky over Virelia Prime shimmered with the fading light of battle. But celebration was short-lived. Hours after the swarm's destruction, a thick silence fell over the capital. The streets glowed with banners and torchlight, but the air felt colder. Above, the human fleet hung like a wall of iron, motionless, silent, watching. Chancellor Varro stood on the balcony of the Grand Spire, looking up at the stars. The cheers from below barely reached him. His thoughts were elsewhere, on the message Admiral Kessler had sent only minutes earlier. Maintain planetary lockdown. No ships leave orbit. No transmissions beyond system, Varro had agreed. But the order gnawed at him. Why seal them off after victory? Why silence a people desperate to tell the galaxy they had survived? Behind him, General Alrin entered, face pale. "Chancellor, we've just received reports. Human patrols are scanning every vessel in orbit. They've impounded our transports. Anyone who tries to leave?" He hesitated. "Eyes shot down," Varro turned sharply. "Shot down? They're allies." "Are they?" Alrin whispered. "We invited them, but they never said why they answered." Varro's gaze drifted back to the sky. "Because we asked for help." But even as he spoke, the words felt hollow. Down in the Virelian command center, the feed from the human flagship flickered to life. Admiral Kessler appeared, his uniform immaculate, his expression unreadable. "Chancellor Varro," he began, voice calm, steady, cold. "Your world has been purged of Zyrith infestation, but your data archives show signs of contamination. Your communications network, compromised. Your fleets, weakened. Your empire, fractured. This system is now under Terran quarantine." Varro stepped forward, trying to remain diplomatic. "Admiral, with respect, this is our world. Our people," Kessler interrupted, "would already be dead if not for us. You called for aid." Humanity answered. "Now you will comply." The council chamber erupted. Generals shouted. Advisors protested. But Varro raised a hand, silencing them. He studied Kessler's face, the eyes that never blinked, the voice that never wavered. "What is your true mission here, Admiral?" Varro asked quietly. Kessler's lips twitched almost in a smile. "To finish what we started." Then the transmission cut. Silence. In the war room, tension thickened like fog. General Alrin slammed his fist onto the table. "They've taken control. Our satellites, our fleet command, all hijacked. We're prisoners." An aide rushed in, breathless. "Sir, they're deploying orbital platforms, massive structures around the planet. Some kind of shield array." Varro closed his eyes. A cage, he thought. He turned to the council. "Prepare a secure link to the outer colonies. We must warn them." But when the technicians tried, the signal failed. Every attempt jammed. Every channel blocked. The humans were already inside their systems. Meanwhile, aboard the TNS Vengeance, Kessler stood before a display showing the planet below. His officers awaited orders. "Deploy containment field," he said. "Phase 1 complete. Begin surface scans." "Sir," one lieutenant asked hesitantly, "the Virelians, they were allies once during the Exodus Wars. Shouldn't we—" Kessler cut her off. "The swarm wasn't born from nothing. Something woke it. Something here. Until we find it, no one leaves. He stared at the glowing sphere below, voice dropping to a whisper. They thought they summoned monsters. They don't know how right they were. Back on the surface, rumors spread like wildfire. People whispered that the humans were not soldiers but hunters. Some said they had come not to save but to cleanse. In a dim bunker beneath the capital, a small group of scientists gathered around a dying console. Dr. Lyra, head of xenotechnology, was trembling. "I've seen this before," she said, "in the archives. The Gyroth, they were born from human code, ancient corrupted AIs from before the collapse. They evolved, multiplied. They consumed the stars. Humanity fought them and vanished." A young officer leaned forward. "You mean they created the swarm?" Lyra nodded slowly. "And now they've returned to erase the proof." The bunker lights flickered. Above, engines roared. Human dropships streaked through the clouds, descending toward key cities. Varro watched from the spire, fists clenched. "They're not leaving," he murmured. "They're occupying." General Alren's voice shook. "Orders, Chancellor." For a moment, Varro said nothing. He looked out at the night sky, once beautiful, now filled with silent watchers. Then quietly, "We asked for help. We cannot fight them, not yet. But we can learn," he turned to Alren. "Hide the archives. Every record of our contact with humanity. Seal it. If they mean to bury the truth, we must keep a fragment alive." Alren saluted, understanding. "And if they discover us?" Varro looked up at the stars, where the human fleet waited like gods in the dark. "Then the galaxy will know what we summoned." Far above, aboard the Vengeance, Kessler received a new signal. A faint trace, buried deep beneath the planet's crust. He leaned closer. The display glowed red. Coordinates blinked. "Found it," he whispered. Phase 2 begins. Outside, the human fleet shifted, engines humming. The stars seemed to dim as their formation tightened, a halo of power around a single world. Below, the people of Virelia looked up and realized the truth. The monsters they had feared were already here. And they wore the faces of their saviors. Beneath the glittering towers of Virelia Prime, deep under layers of old tunnels and sealed vaults, the ground trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling as ancient doors unlocked for the first time in centuries. Hidden chambers hummed with awakening systems, their faint blue lights cutting through the darkness. Dr. Lyra stood before one of them, heart racing. She held a small data core glowing faintly. Around her, soldiers and technicians whispered nervously, their eyes darting toward the sound of heavy engines above. Human patrols had begun sweeping through the lower districts. "They're close," said Commander Raylan, clutching his rifle. "If they find us, it's over." Lyra nodded, voice low. "We're almost done." The Chancellor's orders were clear. "We must find proof and what they're hiding. What they've done." Her fingers danced across the console, bypassing locks that hadn't been touched since the old war. The door hissed open. Inside was a circular chamber, filled with strange machinery. Sleek, silver, unmistakably Terran design. Raylan stepped back, eyes wide. "By the stars, this isn't Varelian tech." Lyra's face went pale. "It's human." She brushed away dust, revealing an emblem etched into the metal. "United Terran Directorate, Black Site 07. Rowland's voice shook. "They were here before." Long before the swarm, Lyra's mind raced. "No, they never left." A soft chime echoed. A dormant terminal flickered to life. Lines of old code scrolled across the display, ancient human script. The system's voice spoke calm and monotone. "Containment breach logged. Project Xyrith terminated. Directive, purge witnesses." Raylan stared. "Xyrith, project." Lyra swallowed hard. "It's true. The swarm wasn't alien. It was theirs. A weapon." Before they could react, alarms blared. The lights turned red. On the screen, new text flashed. "Unauthorized access detected. Terran command notified." Lyra's blood ran cold. "They know we're here," Raylan shouted to his team. "Move, secure the data." They ripped the core from the terminal, sealing it in a lead case. Above them, a low rumble shook the earth. Dropships descending fast. Outside the bunker, floodlights tore through the night. Armored human soldiers deployed in perfect formation, their weapons humming with energy. Drones scanned every doorway. Their commander, a tall officer with pale eyes, raised his wristcom. "Target confirmed. Level 3 breach. Eliminate witnesses. The ground exploded. Dust and debris filled the tunnels as Varelian troops fired back, their weapons bright but weak. The humans moved like shadows, imprecise, silent, unstoppable. Inside the vault, Lyra grabbed Raylan's arm. "We can't fight them, we run." They sprinted through collapsing corridors, clutching the stolen core. Behind them, screams echoed, soldiers cut down, systems burning. The humans advanced without hesitation, their armor reflecting firelight like mirrors of death. Above ground, in the Grand Spire, Chancellor Varro received the alert. The secure room darkened as a hollow feed appeared, footage of the assault below. He saw the human troops storming his own tunnels, executing survivors. His voice trembled. "They're erasing everything." General Alren slammed his fist on the table. "We can't just watch." Varro turned, eyes cold. "And if we fight them, we give them reason to destroy us all." He looked out at the fleet above, hundreds of ships aligned like a cage of light. "We need allies," he whispered. "Send encrypted signals to the fringe colonies. Use dead frequencies. Someone must know the truth." In orbit aboard the TNS Vengeance, Admiral Kessler stood over the tactical display. A red marker blinked, the underground site. His lieutenant approached, uneasy. "Sir, the site's data was accessed. Someone took it." Kessler didn't flinch. "Then they've seen what we buried." She hesitated. "Should we pursue?" He turned to her, eyes sharp. "You think I don't know how this ends? Every time humanity reaches out, we become the thing they fear. But if the Zyrith code spreads again, if they release it, this galaxy burns. Sir, the Chancellor won't stay silent forever." Kessler's jaw tightened. "Then he'll make the same mistake we did, thinking truth brings peace." Below, Lyra and Raylan reached the old sewer vents, slipping out into the outskirts. Smoke rose from the city. Human patrols scoured every district. Sirens wailed in the distance. Raylan coughed, clutching the case. "Where do we go?" Night had fallen heavy over Virelia Prime. The once proud capital lay bruised beneath the glow of human warships. Streets were quiet, haunted by patrols, dark silhouettes moving through smoke and ash. Every screen broadcast the same chilling message. By decree of the United Terran Armada, this system remains under quarantine until full containment is achieved. To the frightened citizens below, it no longer felt like protection. It felt like occupation. In the mountains, far from the city lights, Dr. Lyra crouched inside a half-ruined observatory. Her breath steamed in the cold night air as she worked over a cracked console. Across from her, Commander Raylan watched the horizon, clutching his rifle, listening to the distant rumble of engines. "We can't stay long," he murmured. "They've sealed every flight path. If they find us, they will," Lyra said, not looking up. "But by then it won't matter." The old transmitter before her sparked, coughing static. With trembling hands, she slid the stolen Terran core into its port. The console blinked to life. Strange symbols flickered across the screen, half Varelian, half human. The two languages merged like ghosts recognizing one another. Raylan frowned. "Are you sure this is wise? If they created the swarm—" "They didn't just create it," Lyra whispered. "They became it." Raylan stared, confused. She turned the screen toward him. Images flashed, files, reports, footage from centuries past. The swarm's first appearance, human fleets burning across dark space. And then, a directive signed by an old seal of the United Terran Directorate. Project Zyrith Autonomous Defense Initiative. Objective: evolve beyond human limitation. Raylan's eyes widened. "They tried to make perfect soldiers." Lyra nodded grimly. "And when those soldiers turned, they erased everything. They didn't vanish into myth, they hid. Behind silence, behind fear." A soft hum filled the room. The signal began to climb. She was transmitting everything, every file, every confession, into the deep void across hidden frequencies. Raylan tensed. "Where's it going?" "Every free relay. Every pirate band. Every outer colony still listening. The galaxy deserves to know who they truly are." A flash outside interrupted them. Searchlights tore through the tree line. The roar of engines shook the observatory walls. Raylan drew his weapon. "They've found us!" Human soldiers descended from the sky, black armor gleaming beneath blue thrusters. They moved in silence, forming a perimeter. Above them, a massive carrier hovered, its lights cold and white like an unblinking eye. Inside, Admiral Kessler stood before the viewing window, expression grim. "She's transmitting," his aide said. "We can jam the signal, but not before fragments scatter through subspace." Kessler's jaw tightened. "It's too late, then. The truth's already loose." He turned to his officers. "Bring her in. No killing. She's not the enemy. Not yet." On the ground, Raylan fought fiercely, but the humans were precise, unyielding. A stun round caught him in the chest. He fell, gasping. Lyra tried to shield the console, but the soldiers surrounded her. One stepped forward, visor glinting. "Dr. Lyra," he said flatly, "you're under Terran custody." She raised her chin. "Custody?" Or silence, no answer. They pulled her to her feet, but she didn't resist. Her message was gone now, beyond recall, scattered across the stars. Somewhere out there, someone would see it. Someone would know. As they led her into the transport, she saw Admiral Kessler waiting. Their eyes met. "You knew," she whispered. He didn't deny it. "We all did. Then why come back?" Kessler's voice was low, weary. "Because we made the monster that devoured the stars. And when the galaxy called for help, we answered, not to save it, but to make sure no one repeated our sin." Lyra stared at him, stunned. "You're not liberators. You're executioners." Kessler's expression didn't change. "If that's what's required." The ramp sealed shut. The ship rose into the night, leaving behind a world trapped in uneasy silence. Days later, the message reached its first listener, a small relay station on the edge of known space. A merchant captain picked up the transmission by accident. The moment he saw the footage, his hands trembled. Human fleets, artificial armies, the birth of the swarm, the lie of salvation. He sent it again and again. Within hours, dozens of worlds had the file. By dawn, hundreds. The truth was free, and everywhere it spread, old fears awakened. The galaxy that had once whispered legends of humanity now whispered warnings. In the Grand Council halls of distant empires, leaders watched the footage in silence. One by one, they turned off the screens. "If the Terrans have returned," one said, "then peace is already dead." Aboard the TNS Vengeance, Admiral Kessler stood before the viewport, gazing down at Verelia Prime, now quiet, subdued, waiting. His aide approached. "Sir, the transmission. It's everywhere. We can't stop it," he nodded. "Then our penance begins. What do we do now?" Kessler's voice was heavy. "We stay. We rebuild what they destroyed. Not the swarm, not the Zereth, us." He looked out at the stars, to vast haunted ocean. "We were called monsters, and maybe we are. But monsters still keep the dark away. Below, Chancellor Varro watched from his balcony as the ships held position in the sky. Not conquerors. Not saviors, but guardians of a truth too heavy for one world alone." He whispered to himself, almost a prayer. "We summoned them. Now we must live with what they are." And far across the void, in the shadow of forgotten wars, new fleets stirred. Old enemies blinked awake. The galaxy held its breath, because the last time humanity answered a call, it ended in fire. And this time, it might end in silence. The message spread like wildfire. Across the galaxy's fractured map, the truth of humanity's return and their ancient sin echoed through every system. Worlds that had once cheered the fall of the Zyreth swarm now watched the skies with unease. On Verelia Prime, the streets were quieter than ever. Terran soldiers patrolled intersections, their presence cold and efficient. Above, the great fleet hung in silent orbit, blotting out the stars. Chancellor Varro stood in the shadow of the grand spire, his reflection caught in the cracked marble floor. Around him, the High Council murmured in confusion and fear. "They know everything now," General Alrin said bitterly. "The outer colonies, the trade sectors, even the neutral zones. The truth's out." Varro nodded slowly. "And now every eye turns to us, the world that called the monsters home." Across the chamber, aides whispered frantic reports. Riots in the lower districts, refugees fleeing toward the mountains, people demanding answers. But Varro's attention was on the sky. The human ships had begun to shift formation, not toward the planet, but outward, toward the border systems. "They're leaving," Alrin said. Varro frowned. "No, they're preparing." A transmission flickered across the main display, Admiral Kessler's face illuminated by the pale light of his bridge. His expression was stern, unreadable. "Chancellor Varro, the galaxy knows now. That means the others will come. The scavengers, the opportunists, those who see weakness. You must fortify your world. We cannot protect you from everything. Varro's voice trembled. You don't command us. Kessler's gaze hardened. No, but if you fall, their first proof will vanish. And the truth will vanish with it. Varro took a step forward. You mean to stay? No, Kessler said. We mean to atone. The feed cut, leaving silence behind. Outside, the human fleet ignited. Engines flaring, light washing across the city like dawn. Ships broke formation, scattering across the void in precise, deliberate lines. From the observation deck, Lyra watched them depart. Her wrists bore the faint marks of the restraints they'd removed days earlier. She was no longer a prisoner, but neither was she free. Raylan stood beside her, still bruised from the raid. They're spreading out, he said. To the rim systems, maybe beyond. Lyra nodded. They're not running. They're hunting. Hunting what? She turned to him, eyes dark. Their mistakes. As the fleet departed, reports began to flood in from distant sectors. Human task forces appearing without warning, purging old battlefields, scouring derelict worlds once claimed by the swarm. They moved like a storm, silent, efficient, unstoppable. But not everyone watched in fear. On the fringes, in the black markets of the Daranis belt, the message had become a rallying cry. Smugglers, pirates, and outcasts gathered in hidden stations, replaying Lyra's transmission again and again. They created the swarm, one shouted. And now they're cleaning their trail. What happens when they decide we're contamination too? Rumors spread, whispers of resistance. Ships began vanishing from ports. New symbols appeared on asteroids and hulls, a circle of stars crossed by a broken line. They called themselves the Free Systems Pact, and their vow was clear. No world would kneel again. Meanwhile, deep in the void, the TNS Vengeance entered a dead system, a place of drifting wreckage and silent moons. This was once Helios Reach, the final battlefield of the Xyrith War. Admiral Kessler stood on the command deck watching the wreckage pass. His crew moved quietly, scanning for signals. Sir, said his lieutenant, we found something. A transmission buried deep in the debris. It's Terran. Kessler's breath caught. On speakers. The bridge filled with static, then a broken voice. Old, distorted, unmistakably human. This is Director Vance, Terran Directorate Command. Project Xyrith is out of control. Repeat, containment failed. Initiating fallback protocol 7. If anyone finds this, we are not gone. We are becoming. The signal cut. Kessler stared into the dark, eyes distant.